Have you ever wondered how a massive geopolitical clash from over 1,000 years ago could possibly hold the key to understanding the ultimate purpose of our universe? It sounds like a stretch, right? Like, how could the rise and fall of ancient empires have anything to do with the deepest questions of our own existence? But the text we're looking at today bridges that exact gap. It literally takes us from the gritty reality of a devastating ancient war all the way to the most personal, existential questions we can ask ourselves. So let's dive right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking the fascinating layers of Surah Ar-Rum. That's the 30th chapter of the Quran, and we'll be specifically focusing on the first 27 verses. We're going to be using the historical and philosophical context provided in Maulana Maududi's renowned tafsir or commentary. Basically, we're going to see how a sacred text uses one specific historical moment as a launchpad to explore the profound purpose behind our everyday lives. All right, here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the clash of two great empires. Second, a bold prophecy fulfilled. Third, we'll look beyond the surface of life, then examine the arguments for the hereafter. And finally, we'll explore the signs in the universe. Section 1. The clash of two great empires. To really get the profound points made later in the text, we first need to understand the intense geopolitical world of the early 7th century. So around 614 to 615 AD, the world witnessed a massive shift in power. The Byzantine Empire, the Romans basically, suffered an absolute devastating defeat by the Sassanid forces, the Persians. And we're not just talking about a minor border skirmish here. The Romans lost major vital territories, places like Jerusalem, Damascus, and Antioch. The Persian sweep was so completely dominant that it really looked like the Roman Empire was on the brink of total collapse. Now, global events always ripple out to affect distant societies, right? Down in Mecca, which was far from the front lines, this war had a massive psychological impact. The Meccan polytheists actually rejoiced. Why? Well, because the victorious Persians were fire worshippers, which felt a lot closer to the Meccans' own polytheistic beliefs. On the flip side, the early Muslims in Mecca were deeply distressed. They felt a real kinship with the Christian Romans, since both groups were monotheists who believed in divine revelation. The polytheists actually used this Persian victory as ammunition to mock the Muslims, basically saying that just as the Romans were crushed, the Muslim movement would soon be wiped out too. Moving on to Section 2, a bold prophecy fulfilled. Right when the morale of the early Muslims was really being tested by these taunts, a revelation arrived that completely changed the narrative. These are the opening verses of Surah Ar-Rum, and they make a seemingly impossible claim. The text acknowledges that the Romans have been defeated in the neighboring land. But then it boldly declares that despite this crushing, absolute defeat, the Romans would be victorious again. I mean, to predict a comeback for an empire that was virtually brought to its knees, that was a massive geopolitical gamble to put in writing. But what's really fascinating here is the specific language used. The text didn't just say the Romans would win eventually. That would be too easy. It used the Arabic term bidi sinin, which specifically denotes a constrained window of 3 to 9 years. So the text placed a highly verifiable, ticking clock on this geopolitical prophecy. It set a hard deadline for this incredibly unlikely empire-level comeback. Let's look at how quickly this timeline unfolds. In 614 to 615 AD, we have the severe Roman defeat. Immediately following that, the prophecy is revealed. Fast forward to 622 AD, and the Roman Emperor Heraclius mounts a desperate counterattack. And then, by 624 AD, which fits perfectly within that 3 to 9 year window, the Romans secure a decisive victory. What's historically amazing about this is that the Roman triumph aligned perfectly with the Battle of Badr, where the early Muslims also achieved a major unexpected victory. So the prophecy was fulfilled with stunning precision. Section 3. Beyond the surface of life. The surah essentially uses this fulfilled historical prophecy to grab your attention, only to pivot toward a much deeper spiritual reality. This crucial point is captured perfectly in this quote from the surah. It says, "They know only the outward appearance of the life of this world and are completely heedless of the hereafter." The text is really critiquing the Meccans and, honestly, human nature in general, for only looking at the surface-level materialism of global events, politics, and daily life, while completely ignoring the deeper, ultimate purpose that the revelation is advocating for. Maududi's commentary here beautifully summarizes the core theological argument being made. He points out that viewing the universe as just a mere plaything, like a random accident without consequence, ultimate justice, or final judgment, is a deep intellectual flaw. If you believe the universe has no purpose, well, you live your life without purpose. The text argues that just as the historical prophecy was real and structured, the universe itself has a structured, deliberate design. Section 4. Arguments for the hereafter. Now, the text doesn't just ask for blind belief, it actually presents a logical case.
The commentary outlines a really clear logical sequence that the verses use to argue for the hereafter. Step 1 is the moral necessity of ultimate justice. Think about it for a second. Earthly life rarely delivers perfect justice, right? The oppressor often dies wealthy, while the oppressed die suffering. So a just creator necessitates an ultimate reckoning. Step 2 points to the historical ruins of past arrogant nations, which serve as physical proof of divine consequence. And Step 3 is the intellectual requirement of purpose. A complex, magnificent universe just cannot logically culminate in nothingness.
Looking a bit deeper at that second point, the Surah issues a really vivid warning. It tells people to travel the earth and observe the ruins of powerful, past civilizations. These were nations that possessed immense wealth and military might, yet they denied deeper spiritual truths and were ultimately wiped out. The text presents these ruins not just as ancient tourism, but as physical, undeniable evidence that arrogance and tyranny eventually meet absolute justice. Section 5. Signs in the universe. This is where the text brings these grand cosmic truths down to intensely personal, everyday human experiences. The text begins by pointing to something deeply intimate, which is human companionship. Verse 21 discusses the creation of spouses. It notes that the profound tranquility, the deep spiritual love, and the complex harmony that exists between partners isn't just some evolutionary accident. It's presented as a deliberate sign of mercy and design from a creator. The very capacity we have to love and to find peace in another human being is framed as an absolute cosmic miracle. And this brilliantly illustrates another everyday miracle highlighted in verse 22, and that's human diversity. The immense, sprawling variations in human languages and skin colors are highlighted here. But notice how it's framed. It's not seen as a point of tribal division or hierarchy, but as a deliberate, awe-inspiring sign of a creator's boundless capacity. Our differences are quite literally described as divine signs for those with the knowledge to appreciate them. Maududi's commentary draws a truly fascinating analogy here. Think about a modern factory. Mass production creates millions of identical copies, right? Like a car factory stamps out the exact same shape over and over. It's reliable for sure, but a bit boring. But the creator crafts billions of entirely distinct, unique human beings. From our fingerprints to our voices to our intricate personalities, literally no two humans are identical. This total lack of mass production is used as a powerful argument for a conscious, deliberate designer rather than just a blind mechanical universe. The text then continues to root its philosophy in the mundane, everyday things. Verse 23 points to the daily cycle of sleep by night and the pursuit of livelihood by day. Think about it. The sheer biological necessity of sleep, the way our bodies just demand rest, and the psychological comfort it provides, these aren't just biological footnotes. The text asks us to see the very rhythm of our daily routines as a meticulously engineered system designed to sustain us. Finally, the text points to the sky in verse 24, describing the imagery of lightning and rain. Lightning inspires this mixture of fear and hope, right? While the subsequent rain brings a barren, dead earth back to vibrant life. The commentary explains that this natural phenomenon serves as a direct, tangible metaphor for resurrection. Just as the dead earth is revived by water, humanity will be revived for the ultimate reckoning. Essentially, the evidence for life after death is modeled for us every single time it rains. Which brings us to our final thought. We started with a war between the Romans and Persians, witnessed a mathematically precise prophecy, and then traced how that truth scales all the way to the diversity of our skin, the love in our homes, and the rain outside our windows. Surah Ar-Rum lays out a case that nothing, absolutely nothing, is random. So I'll leave you with this to reflect on. If the universe operates with such intentional, profound purpose, from the rise of empires all the way down to the uniqueness of your own fingerprint, what is the purpose of your own life? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating text with me, and I'll catch you in the next explain.